You see, I'm a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver here in the States. I purposely locked myself out of all media and the internet aside for school purposes. That means no Fortran, no YouTube, no Bulbapedia, no anything. As I was busy with the school year and being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time, I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago my mom threw it away because I told her that my save went dead, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version. It's the only Pokemon game left that they had for the Game Boy Color. $10, fairly cheap. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre, and most likely the reason why you're listening to this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I thought the cart was just errored or something, so I turned it off and on. The same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over, and all the buttons. Eventually the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game in a previous save file, which was odd as I was expecting all of these carts to have been wiped out by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have just chose the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyway. First off, I checked the trainer information. His name was just Ellipses. The person didn't have much originality. I checked the player profile, and apparently the person had 999.99 hours into the game, with all 16 badges, 99,999.9 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon on the Pokédex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Shark or was just a really hardcore Pokemon fan back then. I checked his Pokemon to see what a badass team he had. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played the game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyway. As expected, they were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word spelled out to be leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before they were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left, only 2 attacks. Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon had said either their usual cries. Just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what seemed to be the room outside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if it were just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but I couldn't seem to find a way out. This was not certainly a room I'd seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There weren't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill as I recognized the melody. I had heard it to be the theme you hear when you listen to the radio at the Alph ruins where all the unknown are at. I immediately realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and would need Flash. Before I took care of that, though, I immediately checked my Pokegear to change the radio to something more pleasant, but it turns out that there was no radio card, or even a phone, or time card. There was only a map card in which Gold, Ellipses from earlier, I will call him Gold from now on, was just walking in amidst black. I recall that Cyndaquil had Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use Flash. I didn't see any message saying Hurry has used Flash or anything like that. The room just became lit, just like that, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with linear gray paths heading south. The ladder I used to go up or down wasn't even there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made until I finally made it to the end, which appeared to be a sign. I read the sign, which said, "Turn back now." Suddenly, I was asked to answer yes or no, but no question was asked. I chose yes because I didn't know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a ladder climb sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and in a few seconds was replaced by a not as creepy Pokeflute radio music. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used Flash again. Suddenly it said that Hurry has fainted, which was odd since I recall there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly and suddenly he's no longer in my party. In fact, after a little investigation, none of my Pokemon are there, but instead all replaced with level 10 unknown. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the unknown. My then team of unknown spelled, he died. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit back to reveal myself in a very small room that appears to be only 4 squares big. The walls of that room were gray bricks, as if I were inside something that was hollowed out. Outside that room appears to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I've walked around that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I already concluded this was clearly a hack game and some sadistic fuck sold it to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer file of Ellipses, but only again to find out that it was a sprite of gold. But he was missing his arms. He also seems to appear less smug, but rather seems more sad and empty in a way that I don't know how to describe. For some reason, it also said that he had 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up, though, my character spun downward slowly, as if sinking. After that, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of gold is colored differently now. Instead of the usual red color he dons, he appears completely white now, including his skin. It's as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games placed into a colored background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile, and now as he is white as his overworld sprite. He lost his legs and has what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says that he now has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me as this change of numbers seems to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contains 5 unknown and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The unknown are this time leveled 15 and spelled out, dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except that it was only half of the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. It only had 1 attack. Perish Song. The area I was in was itself the Sprout Tower with the immobile pillar as before, except everything is apparently red now. I walked north for what seemed like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happens when I speak to them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillar finally appears chopped off, with a transparent red in that spot. I went up to red, and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged finally in a battle. The music starts again, which it sounds like the unknown radio music again, but played backwards. Gold's Battleback sprite matches his front one with the bloody tears, white skin, and lack of arms, while Red sprite was the same before as in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle!" as if he had no name, and both of us only had 1 Pokemon, which is weird since I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently with a half a sprite for the back sprite also. The shiny noise and animation were different, as the sounds it made sound like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he was at level 255 and his sprite seemed sad and he had tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon, and run menu, I was only given the option to use the attacks. Since Celebi only had 1, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse! Lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get knocked out. Not like I have a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there were no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level and boost as his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happens as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu have about 150 HP.
Pikachu used mean look.
Not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted. Except in the text it said, "Celebi has died!" Instead of the ordinary drop off the screen animation, the Celebi pack sprite just vanished. For some reason, Pikachu was still up even with the Perish Song, and it didn't count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit.
Pikachu, use Destiny Bond.
Afterwards it said,
Pikachu has died.
With a slow fade-out animation. Apparently I was the winner, as the transparent red sprite showed up and said nothing. At that point I just freaked out, as the transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle just then ended at that point and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld with another change to the gold sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time he was nothing more than his head, with a transparent skin. The head was a bit zoomed in, showing a black void in his eyes. It now stated that he had 40 badges. I then backed out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which spelled out, no more. I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe I finally get to play the game properly, but who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic fuck must have done something. I walked, quote-unquote, around my room to interact with things, and a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what's waiting down there. Note I said walked, quote-unquote, as while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all while doing so, just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and the TV didn't work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower-level room of my house. Everything appears normal except Mom isn't home. After failing to interact with anything in the room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead I just went straight through it to a void. I continued moving south to see what the fuck was going on. My house vanishes as I head south into the void. It was creepy as when I entered the void, the outline of Gold's transparent sprite into a white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually I reached a white area and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said, "Goodbye, forever," and vanished. As that happened, it said,
"Use nightmare,"
which at that point I wouldn't deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back into that small, hollowed-out room surrounded by graves earlier. Or at least I say it was back there, as there's no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved. Not even wall-bumping noise. I checked my trainer profile with absolutely no Gold sprite left. It said I had 0 badges, and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out a phrase that I dared to read. "I'm dead." As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in was covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text was, "R.I.P." That room was a big grave, surrounded by other graves. Gold has already been dead. He died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming a Pokemon Master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game and the same thing happened, at which when I finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick Unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation have folk tales and legends, but the second generation have shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what that rigged game has told me. In early September of 2010, a complete working fan game of Lost Silver was made. The game is on its own executable rather than a ROM hack, and therefore doesn't require an emulator nor a Pokemon Silver ROM. There's been talk about expanding the story by adding a different series of events if the player chooses no at the sign that says turn back now. While many people believe that the events when choosing no, which is referred to as hidden by fans, is a made-up addition by the fans, it is in fact made up by the original writer in response to the creator of the fan game. The standalone fan game was made using an underlying Pokemon engine created by a game creation program called GameMaker. The source file of the game can be downloaded and edited in the description.